Hey guys, Veteran Stories Podcast. Jack here, so excited. We are at Mountain America Stadium today, and we are here to talk to Shawn Banzhaf. He's the Executive Director of the Pat Tillman Veteran Center. He's also the President of ASU's Staff Council, and he's a retired Army Sergeant First Class, combat veteran. He also is the author of The 5 L's, a practical guide for helping loved ones heal after trauma. We're super excited, so make sure to stay tuned after the break, and we're going to have an awesome conversation today. Shawn, thanks so much for coming by today. Really appreciate you taking the time. Super excited that we're at the Mountain America Stadium.
It's really great, Jack, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, reminds of the time that we got to hang out, Treks for Vets, out in the wilderness for 4 days. So here we are out in the wilderness again, I guess.
The wilderness of Tempe.
Yes.
It's really cool. But yeah, so excited to be here. Really love the environment. It's so cool. I love doing these outdoors. I take the opportunity every chance I get to do one of our Veteran Stories podcasts outdoors because I know I really feel like veterans connect with nature. We've spent so much time out in nature.
We have. Yeah.
Sometimes against our wills, but we've done it, right?
We have. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, the first question I want to jump in today is, what made you want to join the military?
It's a family ordeal for me, I guess. When I think back, I wanted to go to college. Obviously, all the commercials, the Army, be all you can be. I wanted that, but I wanted to go to college. I had a football scholarship, but it wasn't going to pay the whole deal. And so the National Guard recruiter came knocking, right? But then I started thinking about my family history. Both my grandpas served in World War II at Normandy. I'm pretty lucky to even be alive. Had one of them not made it, then one of my parents wouldn't have been born.
Right.
Both my folks were born in 1953, so that tells you the story. I had 2 uncles that served in Vietnam and an uncle in Desert Storm. So in 1990, I decided it was my turn, and I would kind of keep that family legacy. And I'm really glad that I did. And of course, I served 21 years before I retired. So yeah, it's a great story to me.
That's awesome. So 21 years, that's a good history. That's a bunch of different tours.
Oh yeah, a lot of different things.
What was your favorite place that you were stationed or deployed?
Yeah, so being part of the National Guard, we had kind of a dual mission. You had the federal mission, obviously, but then you had state missions. So I had a lot of deployments. Hurricane Katrina, for one. I went down there, spent a month helping right after the hurricane. I think favorite, I'd have to go with Honduras. I spent a month in Honduras after Hurricane Mitch in 1999, just devastated the country. And we went down there and helped build roads and schools and hospitals. And I'd never been out of Nebraska before that.
Oh,
right?
wow.
That's where I grew up. I'd never even been out of Nebraska except for basic training. And then, they shipped us over to Honduras, and my eyes were opened, let's just say. But it's a beautiful place, even in the devastation. Probably my favorite.
Sure. And then what was your MOS?
Well, I have 2 of them. So I started out, I like to say I spent the first half of my military career blowing stuff up, and the second half driving stuff around. So I was a 13 Bravo. I was a cannon cocker. We used to shoot the M109 howitzer. I was a section chief for that. And then Nebraska, as a guard unit, all of us we transitioned from combat arms. So we had armor, cavalry, artillery, all of that. And then they transitioned us to combat service and support. And I became an 88 Mike. And so that's how I retired. I was the acting first sergeant of the 1057 Transportation Company.
Okay. Awesome. Well, one of the things that is really notable, right, is that you're an author.
Oh, well, yeah.
I mean, it is.
I don't know.
I don't know too many vets who get out and write a book, right? Mm-hmm. But there's enough. There's some.
Yeah.
There's some. But there's not as many as you might think. Mm. So what was it that drew you into writing your book?
Well, I'd have to say my 15 months I spent away from my family, 12 months of that in Operation Iraqi Freedom, So I told you we were a transportation company, and we trained up to go to war to drive trucks. But then just before we were on the doorstep of Iraq, they said, oh, wait, now you're convoy security. So we had a whole unit of young troops that didn't know anything about combat arms. But I was one of the old heads from 13 Bravo time. So, we spent all of our time doing drills for combat. And so me and a few of the other old sergeants We had our work cut out for us, but we trained up for it. So convoy security, it ran 100 combat missions in around Baghdad, Ramadi, and Fallujah, and saw some stuff, right? Came home with some post-traumatic stress, and it was tough. It was a tough haul when I first got home. So I wrote the book actually several years later, obviously. I wrote it in 2020, right in the middle of COVID. Um, I wanted to help other veterans. So how can I do that? And I developed this kind of thing that my wife had done for me when I came home. Now I know that you have a close relationship with your wife, and you probably owe so much to her. I think I owe my life to my wife.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd be here if she hadn't done these 5 things that I write about in the book, right? But I also know that there are people like our wives, caregivers out there, thinking they don't have what it takes to help their veteran when they come home from war. But actually, this practical guide I wrote gives you those words. Okay, I'm doing these things. I'm loving the person that's come home. I'm listening to the person. Everybody can do everything in this book without being a psychiatrist or a psychologist. And I wanted that practical thing because my wife did all 5 things for me. And I think it helped me walk through it. And I'm a better person because of it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think was the first exposure I actually had to you, even though our paths kind of crossed throughout the years. The first time we met was at a reading of your book.
Yeah.
We went. Oh, it was over here on campus, and we came down and met, and I remember my first experience.
Yeah. And we're still friends. That must have been all right.
Yeah. Absolutely. You didn't run me off.
That's good. Yeah.
And hopefully I didn't run you off.
No way. I think, the book is vulnerable. I had to be vulnerable to talk about the times when I got home where I couldn't even sleep in the same bed as my wife because the bed was too big. I wasn't used to it. It was too far away from the exits of my home. I didn't feel like I could protect myself and my family, which is strange, right? I'm in the rural Nebraska. Nobody's coming after us. But even though I knew that logically, my body was still clicking at combat rate.
All that conditioning that they give us, everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
How many times you have to hit a bunker? How many times you have to worry about small arms fire and IEDs and all those things? So yeah, I was struggling, and I needed some help, and my wife was there to help me, and I hope that I'm helping other veterans with my book too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I have a very similar story. My wife is pretty much the only reason I'm still around, and thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Jody.
Thank you, Jenny, my wife. Yeah, when we went to Treks for Vets, we had a lot of conversational moments, and can you just talk about what Treks for Vets is real quick?
Absolutely. So when I started working at the Pat Tillman Veteran Center, my boss at the time, Michelle Leposki, she said, "Hey, there's this thing called Huts for Vets in Aspen, Colorado. I want you to go on it. It's a wilderness healing thing." And I'm like, what is this woo-woo thing that you're going to send me on, right? And I also thought, well, I've already got through all my issues. I don't need any help. But it was research. So she kind of put it to me, go see if this is something we can bring back to Arizona. And I said, okay. And I went on that thing, and I think almost died because the physical challenge, and I was not in shape. I'd retired quite a long time before this, 6 years. And if you're anything like me, you're like, I don't have a PT test. I can eat whatever I want, no height and weight. I put that to the test, right? So I was not in good shape, and I went on this trip. But what I ended up after the 4 days of being in the wilderness of Aspen is I realized that there were still a lot of broken things in me that I needed fixed.
Yeah.
I just didn't know it.
Yeah.
And so we came back. We developed Treks for Vets with the help of Huts for Vets. Paul Anderson he's the founder of Huts for Vets. He gave us his methodology. He trained all of us, and we put it together for Treks for Vets. We go up into the wilderness of Arizona. This past trip, we went to Camp Raymond, so that's close to Flagstaff. You were there, and we utilized readings that you wouldn't necessarily think have anything to do with the military, but all along, it's just opening up the ability for us veterans to have conversations with one another. And in the midst of those conversations and multiple hikes, we probably hiked about a marathon in 4 days, I like to say. And in the midst of all of that, we built relationships together. There's a camaraderie we all missed, and there's healing that happens in vulnerability with one another. So yeah, it's great stuff, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And one of the things that I want to share with people who are watching, right? You don't think it's going to impact you. You don't think that, whatever's going to happen, you're just like, oh, I'm going to go do a thing.
Yeah.
Right? And I can't tell you, me, after being, in COVID for so long, being away from other people, being away from other veterans, it really shook me. And in good ways, obviously.
Yeah.
But it really caused a lot of introspection, and it caused a lot of thought. And you're in the first 5 minutes of this interview, Shawn has said things that have happened to me, but they've happened to him. And it's one of those things, and it's why I'm drawn to work with veterans so much, is because there's just this absolute connection that we share.
Yeah.
And, when I went to go to the Treks for Vets, I had that experience again, and it was just like, this whole feeling, like I've needed this. I've needed it.
Yeah.
And so, one of the things that I really enjoy about that and I appreciate about that is like, this is a thing that we need. We don't know it. And your thing may not be the nature. Your thing might be getting together with other vets to do, an indoor thing, or go to a shooting range, or whatever it is that you're into. But like that camaraderie that we get, and a little bit of a challenge against ourselves.
Yeah.
I think that's
the hike
really
wasn't
helpful.
easy. The hike wasn't.
The hikes aren't easy, right? Even when you're a marathon runner, right? We're still hiking at 7,000 foot elevation.
Yeah.
We're doing these big draws, and that's a real good challenge for you. And I think that the amazing experience of having those other veterans there with you, and people who have had similar experiences to you and just get it.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things it's priceless.
It is. And I think part of it is, Jack, is that every one of us that served, we might not have been best friends with everybody that we served with, but I have always known there's sage wisdom that there is no greater love than a man or woman who offer their life for another. So you and I stood toe to toe at times with the enemy. We stood toe to toe with our future. And we said, hey, I'm here for you if you're here for me. And there is a bond, and it doesn't even matter if you and I served personally together in combat. I know what you went through to get where you went. And you know what I went through to get where I went. And I think that bond, I love my wife, and I know you love your wife. Had they stood on the edge of the precipice like we have, there'd even be a deeper love, a deeper connection.
Yeah.
And I can't really explain it except to say that it's love, which is not freaky deaky love, but there's like a love we share with one another that it's ingrained in us. And that's why when we get together, regardless of what we do, like right now, I'm feeling it because we're doing this together as two veterans. So yeah, it's really good.
So you've been at the Pat Tillman Center since 2015? 16?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what brought you into ASU, Tillman Center?
What a great story. So, some of your listeners, you might not know it, but I started out, I was a police officer in the civilian world. I did about 9 years. I was a police sergeant, small town America. And I was also a National Guard soldier. So I was doing this dual life. A lot of stuff with war really struck me in a pretty deep way. When I came home, I was still a cop, but I lost a taste for some of that.
Yeah.
And I still wanted to help people, didn't know what to do, so I became a pastor.
Okay.
So, yeah, I did that for a while, from about 2009 to 2020, actually. My wife and I moved from Nebraska to Arizona in 2014 because, we wanted to continue to do college ministry. We just didn't know where. So we ended up here. And I'm walking around the Memorial Union, and airplanes were flying. No, not really. And I felt this. I saw the Pat Tillman Veteran Center out of the corner of my eye, and I felt this draw to go in there. But then I was like, yeah, that's just all you're doing. That's just easy business for you. You know, that why would you go in there? You came here to find international students and love them. So that day, I felt this pull. I didn't go in, but I'm sitting there eating lunch, and this is all in my book too. I'm sitting there eating lunch, and this student veteran comes up to me. I don't know he's a veteran, but he says to me, "Hey, are you a veteran?" I was like, "Yeah, why? How do you know I'm a?" I'm looking around. He goes, "Well, your bag." And I look down, and my bag has patch on it. It's got my name plate on it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. He goes, "Well, I am too, and I wanted to connect to somebody. This is my first day. I don't even know what I'm doing." And I was like, "Oh, so let's chat." So 3 days in a row, and you're not gonna believe this, 3 days in a row, I'm on campus, and 3 days in a row, I felt like I was supposed to go into that center, and I did not. And 3 days in a row, I met a veteran who came up to me and said, "Hey, I feel kind of alone and a little lost. Can I chat with you?" So, I mean, I have a pretty thick skull, but I was like, "Oh, maybe I'm supposed to go in there." So I go into the Pat Tillman Veteran Center and I asked them. I got an appointment with the director at the time, Steve Borden, and I said, "Hey, I'm Shawn. This is who I am, my past. Do you need a chaplain?" And I wasn't a chaplain in the military. You just heard me say that. He said, "We actually do." So I volunteered my time for about a year and a half as the chaplain of the Pat Tillman Veteran Center, and then a job came open.
Well,
I applied just like everybody else. And then 5 years after, almost after the day that I got hired, I became the executive director of the Pat Tillman Veteran Center. So to me, it's like this Cinderella story, if you will.
sure.
To get to where I'm at today.
That's awesome. Really cool. Well, we have some silly questions.
I like silly
Silly
questions.
questions that we like to ask.
This is very veteran. We need a little humor. Yeah.
So the first one is, what's your favorite, or you can say your least favorite, MRE?
My oh, my least favorite, I can tell you right now, is the breakfast omelet. And I don't even know if they have them anymore, but you'd open it up and it essentially was just this jelly wrapped around the green eggs, right? And that's what they give you. I know. Right now, you're like, "Whoop,
no,
whoop."
thank you.
I hated that. But I think probably my favorite MRE, most people would be like, "What are you talking about?" was the barbecued pork rib. So it looked like a McRib from McDonald's, and you get that shelf-stable bread,
Yep.
some nacho cheese, warm that baby up, and bang, you got a McRib. It's probably my favorite of all time. Yeah.
Oh wow. Well, it's really hard to say what your favorite is. I know in past episode I've said vegetarian lasagna is mine.
What are you talking about?
It was
That
bad.
was your thing?
But no. I mean, they're all bad. They're all bad. Nobody,
No, none of them are good.
none of them are good. But
Yeah.
that one, I had low expectations.
Okay.
I had
All
low
right.
expectations, so I got low results. It was fine.
Yeah.
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 But I remember people would like trade for tuna
Oh, really?
because it came with candy.
Oh, well, yeah. You just do whatever was good in the MRE bag.
I
for
just
sure.
traded for coffee. Sometimes
did?
I was hoarding coffee because I drink coffee all day.
I know it.
That's my
Yeah.
story, right? So
Yeah. Those I used to chew on them, the
Yeah.
grounds.
yep.
When we were in Kuwait, there was no water,
Yeah.
and we were out at the test firing range, dark 30, no breakfast. All we had was our MREs. There was no water around. I just chewed on coffee grounds. You just had to have it
Yeah.
to be alive.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I fortunately only at one base deployed did I ever have to eat MREs, and I know.
Wow.
I'm well.
You're bougie.
I was bougie. Here's the thing: I ate a lot of local food
That's
because
what I mean. You're
I
bougie,
talked to
bro.
my friends, right? And my friends, who were people from the local country,
Uh-huh.
would bring me food. Now, one time I got sick, real sick.
Yeah.
And I earned that one. I earned that one. When they bring you a thing of meat and it's clearly not frozen, you just should move on.
Just move on.
Sorry that didn't work out today. Oh, my bad. But yeah, I ate so much local food when I was in Afghanistan, and that was my jam.
Wow.
Down in Helmand,
Mm-hmm.
we were on a 1 MRE a day,
Yeah.
and I just honestly I bought a bunch of food. I
Yeah.
just bought a bunch of food because I was
Bogey
like,
bag.
I'm not
You
going
had
to
to
do
have
it.
it.
Yeah, I
You gotta have
couldn't do it. I couldn't eat the MRE.
Yeah.
It's so
Yeah.
bad. But,
I know that I'm probably way older than most of the veterans watching this, but so we used to have sea rats.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
they'd bring them out in tin cans and
Uh-huh.
just boil
uh-huh.
giant buckets of water and they dunk them in there. So there was a time we were out in the field 11 days. For 3 days, they had somehow supply had messed up. We ate for 3 days, 3 meals a day, sea rat lasagna, green beans, and chocolate pudding. So for breakfast, we'd go in chocolate pudding, lasagna, and green beans. Man, I mean, it was all right, but for 3 meals a day that was you gotta love military chow. Yeah.
Military chow is the worst. When I was in the Navy, we just had less food. That was just what ended up happening.
You were rationed on the boats.
People would steal food from supply, and so then there just was less food.
There's nowhere to go get it either.
Yeah,
to
and
be supplied
because it's gone. Yeah. So I mean that was always interesting, and we had great cooks who would really try hard.
Yeah.
With that rice 3 times a day.
Yeah.
But I mean, what can you do when it's just rice 3 times a day?
I know it. Oh, rice.
Oh man.
Yeah. I remember it was it was Christmas.
Yeah.
I was in Baghdad. We had pushed from Taji, I believe, that night down to Baghdad to Bayat. And it was Christmas morning. We woke up around chow time, went to the chow hall thinking, we're going to get all the Christmas grub. They had no mashed potatoes, no potatoes. It was rice and turkey.
Yep.
And my heart was just broken, man. You're already missing home. You're missing all of the things. And then the one thing you're hoping for is mashed potatoes.
And the turkey's probably dry anyways.
It was dry.
And then dry rice.
But there were officers that were serving it to you, so it made it all better.
Yeah. Where was I for Christmas? For Christmas in Afghanistan, the first time I was there, I was in a place called Tirankout, which is small TK, people called it. It's north of Kandahar in Tirankout province, and it was an Australian base.
Okay.
So we had weird food all the time. I mean, we just had Australian food, right? Because that was who had the mess hall. So I had a really atypical experience because
no kidding.
I'm part of a 2-person team who gets assigned to different bases and go out and do things, and it's just we ate local food for most of our
Australian food.
And then Australian food, like beans for breakfast. That's a thing. Okay.
Vegemite. Okay.
Vegemite on the toast. Oh yeah, all the stuff. We had silly stuff, but yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, it's good.
They had good MREs, but I don't remember eating too many of them.
Yeah.
I just remember that they had red wine in them. It's come on, and the Australian priest who was there was full on giving Catholic mass because it's Catholic mass, right?
I love it.
So
I love it, bro.
Oh, it was
just great.
Good times. But yeah, well, that's really exciting. Then one of the less silly questions that we ask is there a veteran that inspires you?
Yeah. Well, I think I'm going to have to say my grandpa Carl.
That's a great choice.
His whole life, and he died way too young. I think he was 65, 66, somewhere in there. And I was always interested in history. I always wanted to know about the war, when I was a kid. Grandpa, tell me about the war. And he just would never say anything. And once I think I was, maybe a sophomore in high school, freshman. Grandpa, tell me about World War II. He looked at me, Shawn, the girls in Paris were sure pretty. It's the only thing he ever told me about World War II, right? And then I find out later from my grandma that he was in Normandy. And I'm like, here's this guy who is this phenomenal hero to me. And you would never know it. And I think, even though he probably saw things I never could even dream of seeing, he was the most kind man. He loved me. He taught me how to pitch horseshoes. He loved my grandma. He took care of his family. Carl's my hero because even in the midst of horror that World War II was, he still found himself a provider for his family, took care of us, loved us. And I just hope one day, honestly, Jack, that when my kids are sitting around and maybe my grandson's being interviewed in a podcast, they'll say, my grandpa Shawn. And because he loved us well, not because he, fought these wars and could lift heavy weights and could do all the things that I do. I don't care if he was the president of nothing. He just loved us really well. So yeah, my grandpa Carl my hero. I'll always see him as that.
It's a great story.
Yeah, man.
That is kind of what really drove me to do this podcast. Is my grandfather passed away 3, almost 4 years ago, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And for so many years, I got to go down and talk to Grandpa about the war. I got to go ask him. I got to go ask him. I got to go ask him. And, I only had, when I was born, I only had one grandparent surviving.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's my granddad.
Yeah.
And Robert Blair, one of many. He ended up, there's several Robert Blairs in our family at this point, but Robert Blair, that was my granddad. And he was a navigator in the Army Air Force, or the Army Air Corps, as it was called at the beginning. I
remember. Yep.
Yeah, and he was like a navigator, I think is that the correct term?
Yes.
Which means that he was an enlisted pilot.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so
they did anything in that war.
Yeah. So really cool stories. I missed him. And so that's part of what really drives me to come out and do this, is make sure if we've got veterans who've got stories they want to share.
Yeah.
We get those in and we put them in the catalog, right?
Yeah.
Because we want them to exist. And that's part of my drive for this, is like, let's go out and let's talk to people. Let's get them, get their voices on the record. Because
absolutely,
some of our older veterans, we're starting to lose them.
Yeah, we are.
And there's too many of our current day veterans that we're starting to lose. Yeah. But those older vets we're starting to lose as well, just from natural time going on. So
right, and you talked about my book. I'm just going to hold this up. This is about, for me, stopping suicide. Jack, I know it's serious, and I know we're just talking about some other kind of lighthearted things, but at 22 a day, I lost 1 soldier in combat. I've lost 5 from my unit to suicide, right? I don't want that to happen. And I appreciate you out here getting our stories out, giving purpose to veterans. And I think that's in value. I think that's part of the thing, right? Is I don't know if I have any value to give to the world anymore. Maybe I gave it all while I was in the military. Then you get out and you kind of wander around wondering what your purpose is. And I appreciate you out and doing these for our brothers and sisters, because we need that. We need to be able to, every time I tell some of my story, it takes part of it off of my shoulders. I share this with you. I share it with somebody else. And it makes me feel better. It makes me feel more complete and happier. So I appreciate what you're doing, man.
Absolutely.
You bet.
Yeah. I remember in 2016, February 2016, I had just shown up to Afghanistan as a contractor.
Mm-hmm.
And this was part of my comeback. I had tragedy in my life in 2014 while I was deployed. That really kicked me down, and for 2 years, it took me 2 years to stand back up. And going back to Afghanistan, strangely enough as that is, was a part of my healing journey.
Yeah.
And I got to Kandahar, and Kandahar was where I was when my son was killed. And that's my trauma.
Yeah.
Is that my son was killed while I was deployed. Really struggled with that. So I get to Kandahar again in 2016, and a good friend of mine from the unit had committed suicide. And I hated Kandahar. I hated Kandahar for multiple reasons. It was the flagpole. It was everything I didn't want to be, right? And then it was the place where I found out I lost my son.
Yeah.
And then I'd lost another brother that day. Yeah. And I was just like, dude, I can't just keep doing this.
Yeah.
And so that is part of what really drives me to keep doing stuff, because I really want other veterans to know, like, we're all here together. We're all here together. We've all struggled, and we're here, as Shawn said, we're here to love each other, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not a weird thing to say.
No.
You're my brother. I love you, man. I'll take care of you, right? Like, when I need somebody, I know you're there. And when you need somebody, you know I'm here.
Absolutely.
And that's a really big thing. So
it is. The VA, it's important, and they have great services, but they're also struggling half the time to provide those services because it was overwhelmed.
Yeah.
There's a lot of us.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
a lot of us. So we need each other.
Yep.
You know, those moments are paramount, actually. Those moments that we can spend with one another, sharing things, it really helps the healing. But it also, like you say, you know somebody's there. Somebody's got your six. It's really
Absolutely. Absolutely. As I've been going through this, I've been looking and I find more and more organizations who are doing things. And, you know, some people who have like podcasts or YouTube channels, they're like, oh man, this is a saturated area. Dude, I'm so stoked this is a saturated area.
That's right.
Great. That's the best news I could hear all day is
It
that, hey,
is.
there's people out there doing something for other veterans. So,
It is, man. Yeah.
well, just talking about ASU.
Sure.
I know you guys have Treks for Vets.
Yeah.
What other programs are there?
Wow. So you're going to ask me the Pat Tillman Veteran Center showdown? Okay. So I got to tell you, here at ASU, we have over 16,000 military connected learners going to ASU, both online and in person. It's the biggest in any public institution in the United States, and I'm proud that we have a team of extraordinary school certifying officials that make sure that all the students using GI Bill benefits, which is around 6,000 or so, 6,500, use GI Bill benefits. We have a whole team that provide customer service excellence to them. I think, you know, anywhere you go in the United States, if you don't have a school certifying official and you have just somebody trying to figure out how to use their GI Bill benefits, it's a struggle.
Yeah.
I mean, the VA math is a whole nother math. I always tell our Vet Success on Campus counselor, which we actually have here at ASU, he's a VA employee that works in our office. I always tell him we should get a 1 credit and college credit just listening to his presentation because the math in VA is difficult at times. So anyway, so we have that. And then we have a whole team of success advocates. And what their job is really is to help build community, help build opportunities for you when you're struggling. Because it's one thing to get your GI Bill benefits processed in a timely manner. But if you don't have community where you can plug into and feel like you're connected and cared about, you're still going to struggle. So money doesn't make you happy.
Right.
I mean, it helps a little bit. And to have it paid on time is important. But our community that we're trying to build is super important too. And then I got a team that works strictly for career placement. So coming to get your degree, awesome. But you're getting it so you can get the job you want. You want that career. So we make sure that career placement, career readiness is top priority here at ASU. And I've got a team of specialists that are working in all of these areas to make sure student veterans are taken care of. So, and their families. And I think that goes unnoticed at times. At the Pat Tillman Veteran Center, family matters. We truly believe in all the dependents that come here, which continues to grow.
Yeah. A
lot of veterans giving their GI Bill benefits to their kiddos. We love that. And we'll take care of them too, just like we'd take care of you if you come to ASU. And, I would be remiss if I didn't tell you this, Jack, and you probably already know this, but maybe your listeners don't. In Arizona, if you come to Arizona State University, you're a veteran, and you have a spouse that doesn't have a degree, there's the Veteran Spouses Scholarship in Arizona. Free degree for your spouse. Marriage license, DD 214, fill out a FAFSA, and boom, your husband, your wife can get a degree here at ASU. I mean,
that's such a cool benefit.
You don't have to transfer your GI Bill benefits. You could just, you know what I'm saying?
Wow.
The state of Arizona believes in veterans. They also believe in veterans' families, and so does the Pat Tillman Veteran Center and Arizona State University.
That's so cool. Well, thanks so much, Shawn. Thanks for coming on the show today, and thanks for sticking with us through the airplanes. Yeah. I mean, how great of a place is this? We just couldn't say no. And Shawn was like, hey, do you want to do the interview in the stadium? I'm like, come on,
let's do it.
Let's do it.
It's good stuff. I got one last thing to tell you, Jack.
What you got?
Go Sun Devils, bro.
Go Sun Devils. Yeah.